in Vietnam, and I can't mention exactly where for obvious reasons, but super cool, that whole experience, and um, the individuals that are running it, kind of, you know, um, not an underground church, but in ministry, um, and pushing the kingdom forward. And so it's kind of looking for those opportunities, like how do we help facilitate that? And some of it is, a little bit of that kind of, um, kind of, I'm even blanking on the word, but it's like a little bit of the black ops kind of side of, like, we're going to be trying to do things that we can't really talk about, but doing it through providing coffee, to American consumers. And that's a really cool idea to me. I mean, if we
Yeah.
pull it, it's exciting. And so, yeah, like, where do
That's
you
that's supporting missions and you don't even know it.
exactly? Well, I mean, it's what the second largest import for America besides oil is coffee. So, yeah, how do you kind of leverage that for, a positive impact on the kingdom?
Yeah.
How we got into it. And
So I think a lot of we're seeing a lot of discussion now about business as a mission, and this is actually one of the things that I think drew us together. Was looking at our business models. You guys are a business as mission model. We have a business as mission model. We've shifted to not wearing that on our face, but it's still something that we want to be about, kind of underneath what we do. But I think there's a lot of conversation with particularly Christians, but I think even beyond Christians, I think there's this continual question about how do we develop businesses that are doing more than bringing in profits, but are doing the world good. And I think coffee is an excellent opportunity, as hard as it is. And you might both know that this is a really hard, area to work in, but it does provide a very attractive, and as the second largest, global import, or at least American import, a really high utility avenue to pursue, to work in missions, right, and work in business at the same time, and fuse those two things together and have a global impact. And I'm kind of just curious to know, like, you mentioned with like the Beehive Collective, that's, you kind of had some undergirdings there, but in terms of business's mission, like what are some things that you want to have accomplished through Cisterna Coffee?
That's a great question. And I think one of the biggest underpinnings for us on the Cisterna Coffee side of things is looking at what is that total impact for us, boots on the ground, for like the producers and the growers. Before we got started, I was telling you that I'm in the middle of taste testing a couple of different Brazilian consignments that we're potentially bringing in the next 6 weeks, hopefully. And one of them is coffee produced by a missionary in Bolivia, in Santa Cruz. And he works for a Christian university down there, and kind of his side project. This is a really cool story. Jim Harriman is the guy. He's with Francis Asbury Society, and really a cool opportunity. Mutual friend of ours put us together, and he just kind of had always been curious about coffee production. And so he got 9 hectares, and I was able to be with him last June while the coffee cherries were just kind of like weighing everything down, like to see this harvest right before it was going to start being picked and dried. And so for us, part of our impact with Jim has been kind of coming alongside, giving some encouragement in how to process it and all of those sorts of things. And can we pull this off and bring that into the U.S. as an import? But the cool part of the story, I think, for me, is that as he started getting going, now almost 3 years ago, in development, he started getting recognized by some of these other Campesino small time farmers in the area. So he's kind of finding himself in this place of like, this is a new ministry opportunity for him. It's a different group of individuals than he gets to be with his current job and you know, at the university. So it opens up just direct speaking Jesus into the lives of people that don't know him right out of the gate. And for us, that's huge to see. And then second, all of these other campesinos are starting to take notice. And one of the reasons why we're trying really hard to pull this off is that if we can, you know, then we're able to pay, you know, a higher market price for their coffee beans. And the more that we can do that, the more that we're hopefully, you know, a little bit at a time, a little, you know, and a little. And then just as a sidebar, that's one of the things I've learned through all of this and through COVID and kind of jumping when the wave wasn't there. You know, you talk about the, you know, the cliff divers, you know, jumping when the wave's not there and trusting that it's going to come in kind of thing. But like none of this takes off overnight. Like all of this takes a lot of time and patience. And it's not really something that I've had going into this and I've had to kind of learn a lot of, but, you know, these Campesino farmers are starting to take notice of what's going on. And we hope that we can help encourage the reduction of coca production that's imported or exported to Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
And in turn, you know, increased coffee production. So kind of the same idea as in Southeast Asia, except it's cocaine instead of heroin, which that was, you know, getting into all of this, I didn't realize that, you know, one of our major impacts is going to be, you know, that reducing global drug trade at one level, which is really cool to think about, that we can kind of help encourage that. But, you know, for us at Cisterna, like you said too, like we're not going to wear it like right on our sleeve, this whole like business's mission, but it's the underpinning for everything. And how do we make decisions on who we source from and you know what are the sources we're looking for, and you know a big part of that is ministry opportunities, kind of proximity to missionaries that we might already know on the ground that can help provide support for producers if you know they have challenging life events come up, but then also you know opportunities where there is that kind of you know shift of crop production impact. And then with like Jim in particular, like there's direct discipleship happening. This is a ministry avenue that he didn't have 2 years ago that he does now. And so I have friends that you know we're praying for, that they come to know Christ because of their kind of proximity to Jim, and it's all through coffee. I mean, they're learning to be coffee producers, they're growing coffee, and so that's a really exciting thing for us to kind of be a part of.
I think that's one of the things that distinguishes the direct trade movement, and we can define that a little bit here further, but I think that's one of the things that distinguishes that from the fair trade movement, where fair trade is very much a certified program, right? There's two major certifying organizations that kind of are over that. And so, you know, coffee farms and families will buy into these kind of programs and, you know, sell their coffee through those kind of programs. And, you know, I think that's definitely a step forward in the direction of thinking, how do we get beyond what might be called like brokerage coffee, right? The direct trade program is a little bit more nebulous and it's unofficial. There's no organization that's meant to kind of oversee this. And so I think what that means really is like, number one, you have to be in contact with those farmers, or at least in contact with somebody who does that kind of work with those farmers directly. But it also means that you get to bring in values and other pathways of impact that an organization can't, you know, because you think about like, as you're talking about the changing from cocaine, you know, outsourcing to coffee outsourcing, you can have big organizations come in and mobilize that and help accomplish that goals. And I think in that sense, we get the chance to partner with those kind of organizations and say, hey, we really believe in, strength by numbers here. But you don't get those other opportunities, like you said, of discipleship, being something, right? Because a big organization is not going to do discipleship. That's going to be much smaller and micro, right? The intentionality of knowing names and faces and hearing those stories, and then just all the open pathways that can happen from those relationships are things that big organizations can't do. And I think that what you guys want to do and what the direct trade movement as a whole wants to do is really to say, like, hey, this is more than economics. Right. This is about impacting the human beyond their pocketbook.
Yeah, and just to tag into that too, I mean, one of the ways that I think about like the fair trade model, and I like how you kind of differentiate, like, okay, so there's brokerage coffee, and then there's fair trade coffee, and then kind of direct trade right after that. And like for fair trade, one of the ways that I think about it and try to explain it to others is like, I mean, it's an artificial price, I mean, it's a fixed kind of artificial people, these smaller producers that can afford to buy into it, they might actually get, a bump in the sell price that they're able to make per kilo. But that's all artificially controlled. And that can collapse at any time, depending on what the organization wants to do. And so is it a little bit higher than, what the local market might sustain? Yes. So in that sense, is it good? Possibly, but it is artificial now. And then you go to the next step, direct trade. I mean, it's a lot harder to kind of pull off. And it does take that, being there and for us, there was a natural elision of those, characteristics because we were already doing that with Beehive. And so I think that's why it feels like such a natural fit for us, to be relational. But yeah, man, I hope sometime you can come down to Bolivia with me and see, because this past June, so I said we had 2 consignments that we're working on hopefully pulling off and getting into the States. The second consignment is a micro lot that is essentially in Buena Vista, which is, 20-30 minute drive outside of Santa Cruz, Bolivia. It's kind of on the edge of the rainforest, more in the foothills of the Andes. There's this swath of rainforest. It's like 300 hectares, and there's like 400 coffee producers that are in that kind of swath, just on the public side of this national rainforest. And so, you're looking at, less than a hectare. And some of these Campesino producers are just doing maybe 9 plants at a time. And then, hopefully and slowly, it's like, okay, we actually make more doing this than we do with coca. And so we'll probably plant a few more in the next year or whatever. But like, you go and before we have really kind of were there, I mean, we went last June, like they're old school production, like natural processed, and then hulling it. They've got like a village coffee huller that they all kind of share and pass around. And then, we could go from like villa to villa and see this year's crop laid out in tarps, drying in the sun. And like, it's amazing. I mean, chickens are running around and the kids are kind of employed to keep the chickens away from the coffee beans and all of this. And it was just like, it's beautiful. And so we've got,
by the way, this is what we call single origin coffee, meaning it's not a combination of several different farms, but it's coming from one small unique place. So you very much get like the local soil and the local weather and their harvesting process and everything. And so that all goes into that particular bean. Whereas a lot of the coffee that we get nowadays is like, there'll be regional selects or pulled from different places and kind of combined. So you can lose some of the distinctiveness in there. But it also shows the bigger impact that you can actually have, because these small little farms oftentimes can't turn the head or aren't big enough to turn the heads of some of your bigger trading